I'm Julie Saunders.
I'm Jan Wilson. Julie and I both have experience as school librarians, and we've worked together as district library leaders.
In each episode, we'll dive into our profession with interviews and meaningful content to inspire you. We're not experts,
but we're pretty close.
The ideas and opinions shared by any host, guest, or listener are their own and do not represent those of any respective school district.
Welcome to Library Exchange.
This episode is sponsored by Bound to Stay Bound Books. Bound to Stay Bound is celebrating their 105th birthday this year. They're the oldest book jobber in the U.S.
And since they started binding books, the very first one until today, their mission remains the same: to supply the very best bound books to libraries that can withstand hundreds of circulations and years of use.
Books are backed by the BTSB guarantee and top-notch service. Kevin Teschel is the manager of the Southern region since 2016 and is supported by Caitlin Connor, your customer service rep at the home office.
Visit them at btsb.com. So, Julie, every time I listen to our intro, it reminds me of 60 Minutes, that news magazine show. I'm Julie Saunders. I'm Jan Wilson.
You do remember you wrote the intro.
Well, there's no reason to name names. There's no reason to go there. I'm just making a pop culture reference, but now that you say it, whoever wrote it is probably smart, creative.
Okay. Are you good?
I'm ready.
All right. Well, let's introduce our guest. Today, we are joined by a school librarian from just outside of Boise, Idaho. She's dedicated to students' right to read, chaired the Georgia Peach Book Award Committee, and led efforts to establish a student reading competition in Gwinnett County Public Schools.
Currently, Julie serves on the steering committee of the Idaho Battle of the Books. Throughout her career, she has been named County Media Specialist of the Year in Georgia, and since moving to Idaho, she's been awarded Teacher of the Year.
She was actually the first librarian in her district to receive a Teacher of the Year honor at the school level. Other school librarians have since followed in her footsteps.
Librarians are teachers. People,
we are.
They should be included in Teacher of the Year. Let's go.
Welcome to Library Exchange, Julie.
Thank you. I'm so happy to see you guys.
So I have two people named Julie today, so I'm going to refer to you as Julie Hatcher.
Okay.
Julie Hatcher, welcome. And to give everyone an idea of the community you serve, if you could tell us a little bit about enrollment and grade levels at the school where you currently work, and any other information about your district and state.
Okay. Well, first of all, let me tell you about our state. Okay. So I moved from Georgia, which was, densely populated and just busy, to Idaho. My husband got transferred. We moved out here and I was like in shock. I'm like, where are all the people? Because it's not, where we are, we're Metro Boise area, and it's still really not that huge. But our state alone, our statistics, our population is like just at 2 million, when Metro Atlanta, the population is over 6 million. So you can imagine we're a huge state, but we're so rugged and mountainous. And just some areas, nobody lives there because you can't get in. Like, there's nowhere to go unless you're like, I guess, a super mountaineer. But
So sorry.
No, go ahead.
You said there's like mountains in the middle for someone like me who's never been there. Okay, so that kind of is a divisive line in a way.
It kind of is. Yeah,
Okay.
where we are, we're in a valley, but we do have foothills that then lead up into more of the rugged mountains. So, yeah, so our main population is the southern part of the state, southwest, and the very, very north part. There's communities everywhere, but just the more populated areas. But my district is the biggest in the state, and we have about 40,000 students. We have 58 schools. I'm in a high school. I'm one of 7 traditional schools, but we do have some other kind of outreach kind of schools, and they call them academies. So that's
Great.
my district. Yeah.
So interesting. So it's our understanding that you've been instrumental in developing and expanding a reading competition in your area. And we felt like this would be a good topic for librarians who are thinking about starting their own reading competition. So let's start with the why. Why is this a beneficial program for students?
Because it's fun. It brings all of our reading nerds together. And really just they have a community, a place to join in, because many of these kids aren't in band or sports or anything else, and they're just readers, and we just kind of tap into that and get them to, join with other like-minded kiddos. And when I moved here, there was already a group of people kind of following the Oregon Battle of the Books program, and they're the ones who got it started. I came on a little bit later, like 2 years later, and just told them a little bit about what we did in Georgia, and they're kind of similar. So now I am doing the high school chair and trying to, we choose books for the high school students and for the competition, and then we have kind of a little a little committee. But everything is volunteer, and I feel like it's a little bit harder to get high school people on board. The elementary and middle school, it's like everybody wants to do it, but high schoolers are a lot busier.
Well, I appreciate that you mentioned that part of the why is fun. And one of the things that we always say is that reading in 2025 is it's meant to be a social experience. And so you've made that a social experience with your students.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, the students who, you could have a separate reading club, or the students who are on competition for IBOB. Not all students are competitive, but it becomes those students' thing, that you said don't necessarily compete athletically. So that's a good point. So Julie Hatcher, I can imagine this is an impossible thing to do on your own. How do you rally the troops? How do you get buy-in from other librarians or students to participate? Can you address that?
Well, for the librarians, we have a really great secondary librarian group, which is middle school and high school. And we meet all the time online every Wednesday. We do our PLCs. In the summer, we have something called a summer summit. Our state librarian for the state school librarian puts it all together. And we meet in various locations in the state. And we usually have a session on IBOB, Idaho Battle of the Books, and try to draw interest. And we do mock battles with librarians to show the kinds of questions and how you earn points. With my students, though, I do have a regular book club with about 30 kids, and some of those kids are interested in Battle of the Books. So they definitely overlap.
Okay.
So I can imagine that when somebody is trying to create their own reading competition, if they're interested, it would be a very overwhelming task without helpers.
Right.
And you have some good advice as far as connecting through the PLC network that you already have. And it sounds like that there was a lot of buy-in. But where do you begin when you're planning with these other individuals, especially with the geography where in some cases you can't really get face-to-face with folks? What advice would you give to someone that's trying to start a reading competition and trying to connect with others to make that happen?
First of all, check with if you have a state librarian, somebody who works with school. Our steering committee, we do Zoom meetings like this, once a month, every 5-6 weeks, to check in with each other to see how things are going in that part of the state. Really, it's communication. Reach out to your public libraries. That's what's kind of cool about IBOB, is we do have public librarians who are on the steering committee. So when they make teams, they advertise it in their public libraries, and they make teams of maybe homeschoolers, people who don't go to traditional schools, and they form a team. So we've got a couple public librarians on there. So it's a big network. It's, anytime you go to a conference, bring it up. We try to have IBOB sessions at different conferences.
Go ahead.
We do have a state listserv, so we'll post on there. It's not as active, and we have a Facebook page. It's not as active as we'd like it to see. I do have my friend Amy creates a newsletter for the Battle of the Books, and she puts things out to people who have competed before, just to kind of drum up interest. I know there's turnover with librarians, so then it's reaching out again and getting those people involved.
Good.
So
From a student perspective, how do they find out about the reading bowl? And it starts from when and ends when each year?
We start preparing it or getting the information out in the fall. We just, in my case, in my school, we put out flyers. We have the hallway TVs. We have social media, and we have a first introduction meeting. And I tell them what IBOB is. It's a competition. Everybody's got to read from a set of 12 books. We all for the entire state. We go to competition in April. So really, I just tell them, you're just reading from now until January. And like just this week, we got our questions, the practice questions. So now I meet with my groups during lunch, and we just go through the practice questions. And then in March, I'll have an in-school battle and take my top two teams of 5. And
So-
one of the 5 is
Sorry.
an alternate. Sorry.
So you mentioned the number of books at the high school level. Can you just talk to how books are selected at each level, and then how many are the final numbers at
Yeah.
each of the levels?
Yeah. So we take nominations from anyone, from students, from librarians, teachers, whoever, public librarians, and we put them all in a spreadsheet. And this is what we're working on right now for 25, 26. So they're all listed. We put like main characters, how many pages, which genre, the little synopsis, whether have won any awards. But the main thing is each book has to have 3 readers for it to go on. So we're kind of revamping our system of how we're deciding how they should go on. At the high school level, we're putting yes, no, maybe. It's very scientific. And then the no's, like if we get 3 no's, we'll just not even look at that one. So right now at the high school level, we have about 45 books that are getting read by 3 readers. Most of them are done. And in February, we'll have a Zoom meeting like this. I've got about 10 people on the reading committee, and we will go through and kind of battle it out for our favorites and just let them fall. Like if we don't have every genre, we don't have every genre. From this group right now, and our final will be 12 books for high school. Right now, we seem to have a lot of historical fiction. We have some graphic novels, like more, I don't know. They're just like this current year, we have a lot of realistic fiction. It's just kind of the way it worked out for the best books.
It's the way it happens. So how many elementary and middle books?
They have 16 books each.
Okay, and then high school has 12.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I would imagine it'd be actually a very fun experience to be on the committee, because as a school or public librarian, you're getting familiar with the trendy and the newly published and just good literature to be able to recommend and be that reader advisor in your own library.
Exactly.
Now, is there a copyright, like a limit of we want to use books that have been published since a certain year?
No, that's with IBOB. No. So some of them are picking up some older books, and I want the new releases. I want the new current. But if there's like an awesome older book that, maybe fell off the radar for these kids, we try to bring it back. But I don't want to bring one back just to bring it back. Like, you know what I mean? I want it to have some merit to it, or just a good story.
And to your same point, when you're heavy in one genre, it's just sometimes what happens to be the trend that's being published. But I love the fact that you do this, because just like students, when I was a coach on this type of a team, it forced me, and I use the word encouraged me, to read books that I would never choose for myself. I would have never chosen to read dystopian fiction, and then Hunger Games, Ready Player One. So I'm sure your students have maybe expressed that same.
Yes, for
feeling?
sure. For sure. Like I don't read nonfiction, and I'm like, just read it, like expand your horizon. Same thing with our book club, because I'll pick the books, and I know most of my girls in this book club. I have 28 girls and 2 boys. The boys will read anything. They're cool. The girls all want fantasy and romance, and I'm like, we're going to break it up. You're going to read some realistic. So we'll see.
So I can imagine that there are probably quite a few teams that do participate and that you have to host for the in-person portion of the competition. How is that planned? Is it all on the same day? How do you get the volunteers? I know there's probably a registration fee, and does that go towards paying for some of the equipment like buzzer systems? Can you tell us a little bit more about the actual event days?
Sure. We don't use buzzer systems like we did in Georgia. Those were always fun. Ours right now, we're kind of thinking about changing some things around, but in my district, since we are the largest, we have in-school competitions and we narrow down our teams. So right now, elementary and middle can only bring one team from their school. Since we have less high schools, we can bring two. So we've had 3 separate days of competitions in my region. I would love to try to get it to be all one day. It would be pretty massive because we have
Julie
all the
Hatcher?
families. Yeah.
How many students are on a team?
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
There are 4 with 1 alternate, so 5. And then, so I'm going to switch out my kids like between rounds so they all get a chance to play. But so we have 3 separate and we have them in April. We just figured out when our April competition is going to be. So as far as volunteers go, we say each team has to bring 2 volunteers. And then our steering committee, made up of about 8 of us, we go to every competition in our region, which is Idaho we've broken it up into 6 regions. So I'm in region 3, which is the biggest one. So we do need more help there.
So I skipped ahead by asking about the event, but I'm kind of wondering, how do you get the questions written and how are those vetted?
Good question. So the steering committee in Idaho, we also write the questions. We are busy year round. So kind of the timeline, we're choosing the books now. We go to competition. Then in the spring, summer, we start writing the questions for those 25, 26 books. So we write them. And then in this year, I think it was October, November, we all got on a Zoom meeting and we read our questions aloud to each other. So we wouldn't make sure like my book wouldn't be this, like my question couldn't be picked up by maybe Jan's book. Because we'll say something, I'll be like, that was in my book too, if something was similar. So that's how we vet them. We do have one person on the steering committee. We call her the question queen. And she goes through and checks our grammar. And she has read some of the books, but not all of them. And she makes any fixes our mistakes. And then we kind of have another round of vetting where 3 people, 1 from each level, go through them again, clean them up anymore before we send them out to the teams in January. So like I said, just this week, I received my high school questions.
2 questions, Julie, regarding the questions. One, don't you have 2 types of questions in your iBot?
Yes, we do. We have the first half are called In Which Book? And so the kids just have to reply, Dry by Neil. I can't even talk. Dry by Neil and Jared Schusterman. So they have to listen to the question. They have 15 seconds to come up with the answer. And since we don't buzz in, they're allowed to talk quietly within their group. And then one of the people in the group is the spokesperson. It's usually the person sitting on the outside of the table, the way we have the tables arranged.
Okay.
So it is a group effort. And they're always so funny. We always have to tell them to not talk loudly because the other team has a chance to steal. So, and that happens. We've got some loud whisperers, and that's how sometimes we get points.
Julie Saunders is probably thinking Jan cannot be on my team.
Yeah, they just get so excited.
Julie Hatcher, so one format of the question is that they identify which book by the authors or, author. And so when you guys are vetting these questions, I think it's important for people to realize it is important to read your question aloud to someone because written, it makes sense to you. When you read it aloud, sometimes you have to switch the phrasing.
100%. Yeah, we definitely do. And then the second half of the questions are just content questions. Like they might say, In Dry by Neil and Jared Schusterman, what happened to the dog? Or, you know what I mean? And then the kids have to respond. But we keep them very simple, concise answers. Sometimes the kids will answer with some big, long paragraph, and we're just looking for one word. And we're like, okay, so the moderator, who is our question reader, they can see the answer. They can see the page number if they needed to double check if that was the right answer. They're just, we just go through a volunteer training and we tell them for the moderators, this is what you're looking for on this piece of paper.
For that second set of questions that have content related questions, is that also a collaborative effort with the team?
Yes.
Or individually?
Yes, everything's collaborative.
And then I have another question about that. So on the day of, is there some type of challenge process if for some reason a team feels that they answered correctly and they were told that the answer is not correct?
Yes, they can challenge it right then after the question has been read, and the moderator will mark a note. And then after all the questions are read, they'll go back and they'll ask the team, do you want to challenge this question? And only the spokesperson can answer. They can't talk to their coach. They can't talk to parents. They are the ones who have to say, yes, I do want to challenge. And then they get a copy of the book, and they get, oh gosh, I feel like it's 2 minutes to go through, or maybe it's a minute. Don't quote me. They have to find
you are
it.
being recorded.
That's true. That's true.
It is going to be documented.
It is documented. So they have to be able to find it on their own without any help. And they have to go up to the moderator and just point on the page and show them that this is what the student does.
This.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
And the moderator will look at it and see if it matches to what their page says. And, most of them don't win a challenge. The kids are wrong. And sometimes after the kids think about it, they're like, oh no, we decide we don't want a challenge. Like, that was correct.
I love that.
I do too.
You're empowering the students.
For sure.
Sometimes they won't speak up for themselves. They're not confident enough. Then they may be wrong. But I love that aspect of it being a team of students coming together to talk about the answer. And it doesn't put so much pressure on an individual.
Well, it encourages
Yes.
collaborative leadership skills, which is
I kind of just said
you
collaboration.
You did, but I just really feel like that's a skill that's super important in life, and I just love that it exercises that ability for them to develop collaborative leadership skills.
Mm-hmm.
And we tell them during practices, we're like, if you don't feel something is right, you can challenge, but they're only allowed one challenge per round. Mm-hmm. So per team. So we kind of, I guess I should kind of maybe throw out some wrong answers during practice to see if I might do that and then see if they can challenge me. But as a moderator, sometimes I'll moderate the elementary or middle where I haven't read the books. And when they want to challenge, I start sweating. I'm like, oh my gosh, are they? But at least I have the book and the answer in front of me. And then if it looks correct, and then sometimes we have questions that are just, as we read them aloud, like you said, Jan, they just are not flowing. And the moderator can decide to throw it out. And then there's some extra questions at the bottom of the set, like 2 extra in which book and 2 extra content questions. So sometimes that does happen, but the moderator's the one to make that decision.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a question. Sorry.
It's my turn. Go ahead.
Sorry, but I'm very interested in this. Do you have the same host sites for each level each year, or do people volunteer their school to do that? Because you'd have to have quite a number of classrooms to be able to make this happen in one day for each level.
Correct. Yes, we do have people volunteer to step up and host it at their school. And yeah, we do need a lot of classrooms, especially elementary. We were allowing them 2 teams per school, but this year's going to be the first year they have to drop it to 1 because it's massive. We had it at my high school last year for elementary, and mine is the biggest high school right now because it is the most, newly built. It's 4 years old now, but we have all the parents, all the grandparents, all the siblings. They were in our commons area, which is our cafeteria, and we were spilling out. It was huge. And then
what a great.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great problem for sure. And our superintendent came and they were just kind of blown away that this is a reading competition. We're big for sports as well, but to see this kind of competition. So principals come, we invite them, and our board members came last year too, to the elementary.
Great.
But you're right. I had to reserve, I had the whole upstairs of our classrooms because it was massive. So the school this year we just found the elementary school place for a tournament. And I have not been to that school. So our steering committee will take a walk through and help them. And we set up on a Friday night because competitions are always Saturday. We get the rooms ready and all the supplies they need. And the librarians, our steering committee, we call it like Library Central. and we hang out in their library, and that's where we do the scoring. We have one person who is amazing at scoring and setting up the brackets, and so she works on that.
Is there a place at the end of the competition where everyone gathers, where the award ceremony happens? So
Right.
Closing.
Think about the kickoff ceremony or the closing ceremony, whatever you guys.
Yeah, the opening closing ceremony. Like I said, this year we did it in our commons. We've done it before in auditoriums. It's the same location, but after we do post the standings, like right around lunchtime before we go into the semifinals and the quarterfinals and semifinals. So the teams who see that they're not in it, a lot of them go home at that point, which kind of does help with traffic. But some do stay. Just depends, like at the high school level, they can drive, so they can leave and go to lunch. But some people want to stay through the whole thing.
Can I speak now, Julie?
Yes.
So as I'm listening to all of this, I think we all realize it takes a village to do this. But at the same time, I just wrote a few notes. For those people who don't think that students enjoy getting together to talk about what they're reading, they should see these students, because I can remember in between rounds, opposing teams saying, so what was your favorite book this year? And having those conversations. I'm sure you see that.
Yes, all the time. It's just a total nerd fest in a great way. And the kids come all dressed up in T-shirts, like either their school name or their team name. And the crazier the team name, the better. The things these kids come up with are hilarious. And, some wear like tutus, and they just get all dressed up. They bring like a mascot, maybe their school mascot or a stuffed animal, wear things on their head. Like I said, it was great to see principals and our superintendent and board members. They needed to see something like this. So we invite them all. We invite them. I think we've invited the media. I don't know if they've come. I'm trying to remember if we've ever been on like the news, but we'll keep doing it every year and see if somebody will come and watch us.
Creating a sense of belonging.
Yes.
I mean, again, to see that many people come together for a reading bowl, that is like, fills your bucket. So more people need to do this or volunteer or check and see if it's in their community.
Yes, 100%. Yeah, check with your state. Just network with other school librarians and public librarians. There may be opportunities out there you don't even know about that are happening. And, with our state being, so massive. So that's, that if we can get it going, being like all over the place, and we're just growing. This is, I think, our 7th year. And every year more schools are coming on board, which is amazing.
Well, Julie, thank you so much for sharing this information today. I know that there's a librarian out there that's probably been thinking about how they can begin a process like this, but it sounds like it's going so well for you guys, and it really is just a way to bring the community together. And even though it's only your 7th year, just think about the impact when students become adults, have their own children, and they're thinking fondly back at these reading experiences, and then it becomes generational. It becomes one of those things that's really part of the community. So again, thank you so much for attending today and sharing all your wonderful information.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. It's been fun.
Now for our recap. Julie made us feel like anyone can develop and expand a reading competition. So many benefits for students.
I kept thinking, Julie, when she was talking about the steering committee and they had 3 adults read the book to keep it or, nix it from the list, I kept going back to that simile from Dr. Bishop about books as windows, mirrors, and sliding glass doors. It seemed we're not going to include a book just because it's the new thing. It's let's have representation from all cultures, all ethnicities for our students.
Absolutely.
And one thing we didn't speak to, which I believe is important, is the benefits of students reading an entire novel. It touches on empathy because they're able to experience what the character experiences from beginning to end, and plot, theme, character development. Those are all important for critical thinking.
And not to mention reading stamina. The younger generations need more practice developing learning stamina for their daily lives, and reading an entire book to compete for a competition really helps develop that reading stamina.
Yeah. I mean, just think about the soft skills they're learning from this competition, whether at practice or at the actual Battle of the Books.
So in addition to that, just the fact that the students own their portion of the competition where they work together to answer questions and have to take charge when they present a challenge to the judge for answers they don't agree with, that's an opportunity for students to develop collaborative leadership skills also.
Yeah, that takes a lot of confidence for sometimes in that competitive environment to speak up for yourself.
And I have to think that we can end this with what Julie began with. And we asked her about the why. And the why is it's fun. Discussing the books to prepare and working toward that win encourages the concept that reading is a social experience.
I got nothing else. Mic drop.
Make sure to visit our website at www.libraryexchangepodcast.com.
You'll find episode notes and links. You can even submit your questions or inspiring stories that may be featured on the podcast.
If you're looking for some swag for your library or book-loving friends, visit libraryexchange.etsy.com.
That's a lot of URLs, so I'm glad you had to say all of that, Julie.
Thanks for joining us. We can't wait to have you back for our next episode of Library Exchange.